How's it going, guys? I'm Ace of Death, and that's Simpleckz, and we're from FragDojo.com, and we're going to do a quick little podcast. We don't have a name, we don't have anything for this show yet. We just kind of wanted to put our thoughts out on something that's news in the esports world lately. And I'll let Simplex explain it to you.
Basically, the one thing that we're going to be talking about is esports and journalism. How it goes hand in hand. It's the based upon the entire thing of how what happened with Slasher, Alex Garfield, members of the EG team, DJ Wheat. What happened earlier yesterday, I believe it was on Inside the Game.
Yeah, basically what you guys, if you guys don't know, Inside the Game is a podcast show that has three members of Evil Geniuses in control, Idra and the Muslim, and then
As well as DJ Wheat
and
hosting
DJ
the
Weed
entire.
is the host, and it's his show because he hosts live on three in that whole three or four show series that he does. And it was just a normal podcast. They ended up talking about esports journalism and about some of the articles and releases that Slasher has come out with recently.
More specifically the EGTL, TL being Team Liquid merger, Stefano being picked up by EG, as well as J Dong being picked up by EG, and then to a lesser extent, Snoop being picked up by Liquid.
They also were referring to the CLGEU thing that hasn't
The
the
un
League of Legends that
Okay.
hasn't been a confirmed yet. So they didn't talk about it, but they were all talking about it without talking about it. But what ended up happening was they wanted to talk about that situation on the show, and they wanted to kind of address some issues because I guess there was a fight earlier, like a verbal battle or something. I don't know. Maybe it's on Twitter. Tyler and I, we aren't really sure where it happened, but In Control started off talking about how he respects Slasher, but he just doesn't respect what he's doing, and that it's hurting esports and hurts just hurts the community in general when Slasher leaks this information about different players moving and free agents and different things like that. Um, and what else happened, Tyler?
Um, Basically going into it, he sort of like Slasher ended up actually being in the Twitch chat of the show, and later on brought him on, and he sort of talked with mainly like DJ Weighted in Control about how what he's doing isn't really hurting esports. It's more just like him being a journalist and sort of going to like bringing up the ESPN side of it, where like um journalists don't really like care, like they care what they're like when they break, like, let's say Cliff Lee signing with the Philadelphia Phillies a couple of years ago. Like the journalists were the ones who ended up breaking that news, and it didn't actually hurt the entire game. It didn't really hurt the organization either. It's just sort of like a
Yeah, Slasher Slasher basically related esports to sports, and he said that everyone calls it sports, so why do we not treat it like sports in the newscasting, or in the news sector? Why is esports journalism any different than what happens on ESPN every day with coaching breaks and rumors and whether or not people are going to start and all this stuff that doesn't come out, but ESPN has sources and they break it, and they have anonymous sources and they break the news for viewers and such, and it builds up hype. Um, so then later on in the show, the owner of Evil Geniuses, which his name is
Alex Garfield.
Alex Garfield, that's right. Um, he was in the Twitch chat, or he texted In Control or something and said he wanted to get on the show and talk about it, talk about his feelings. So DJ Wheat obviously brought him on because he's an influential member of the esports community, and he probably has good things to say. And could probably contribute to the conversation. And then that's where the show, I thought, took a huge downturn. Um,
It was basically just a ego stroking turn of the worst for every single person involved at that point. It was just sort of like, we really let's throw all integrity of the show out the window, and
yeah,
let's just have a verbal battle in front of however many people happen to be watching the show. I watched a replay, so I wasn't 100% sure how many people did see it, but I mean, it was one of the top threads on the SC, the StarCraft Reddits, and people have been blowing up Twitter all day about it. So I mean, it's the word has spread, the word has gotten around.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about it is that even if you didn't see it live, you could see it on VOD.
Hmm.
And it's honestly, to me, it's worse on VOD because I can rewind it and re-listen to some of that stuff, and it breaks down pretty quickly once he gets on there because basically Alex is allowed to talk for 2-3 minutes solid without interruption, and he himself just pisses himself off even more as it goes. He just says, you know, you're doing this and you're causing harm to my community and you're taking money away from me, and he just tore Slasher a new one, and Slasher just sat there and took it, which I gained a lot of respect for him because he didn't barge in and try to cut him off the whole time, and he just sat there and listened. I lost a little respect for DJ Week because he should have stopped that while it was happening because it is his show and he brought him on as a
Yeah,
guest.
and the amount of time the by the time DJ Wade finally retook over his show, it was far too late at that point. It was pretty much at the point of no return. Words have been said, like ridiculous statements are being thrown out at this point, in sort of referring to the which we'll get into a little bit, the um union per se, to block out Slasher from getting any from getting any what's the word I'm looking for, like articles or any like an actual
Any
any
news,
news,
anything
any
from
breaking
any
news, like
teams, yeah.
yeah.
Basically, what he ended up saying was, I'm gonna pull together all these teams, and we're gonna stonewall you. We're not gonna
Yeah.
let you have anything. Which I think is absolute crap.
It's not
And
happening. It's
and
That's
it
absolute bullshit.
it won't happen because smaller teams that aren't EG need that kind of coverage. They don't have marketing teams that they can release these giant press pieces, um, all by themselves. Plus, I don't think it could happen anyways. Shit gets leaked out.
Yeah,
It happens. Like
I mean,
you can't keep something secret unless you only have like 3 people who know about it, and all 3 of you live in the same room and you don't have the internet.
yeah.
Because like,
I think the biggest problem now is sort of like when people are going to like when people are telling what the hell? Sorry. When people are like discussing like certain things, like I guess say we'll bring up the Stefano signing. Like if you go and say yeah, we're like if you go and tell in control, well, we're thinking of signing Stefano, um like this will help us bring like more exposure because he's considered one of the best like non-Korean threats in the StarCraft 2 scene. And then he go tell somebody else, and then like by that point, way too many people already know about it. It should really just be between the probably the player in question, so say Stefano, and then the upper management of evil geniuses that only know about that.
yeah, no,
As
see,
soon as you
no
start,
one else should know about it. Exactly
no, and
right.
that's and that's probably where the like some of the major like stems of this entire thing is happening, where um people are sort of like they're telling way too many people and then expecting people to find out not to go and say anything, and it's sort of just like one of those um I'm gonna pinky swear you type thing because
Yeah,
they're not really doing any like actual legitimate concerns. Like they're not doing any embargoes from you, like saying you can't write about this or you can't say anything about this, or non-disclosure agreements, which you have in pretty much every industry. Major one being like the game reviews, where companies will go send out like an early copy of the game to certain people, be like, okay, here's the game early. You can't talk about this game until this date, and
yeah,
then
and
go and whatever claims on the game you want.
I had a big gripe with that point right there. The embargoes that they kept talking about and the NDAs that they were talking about. Um, NDAs and embargoes or whatever, they don't really hold much value to Slasher. I could see he kept arguing. They kept saying, "Well, he kept saying I never get that stuff," because no one ever presents that to me. No one ever gives me a piece of news and says, "Now don't report on this for a week, or else." what's the or else? First off, for
And it
Slasher, he'll get more out of it if he just reports the news, and that's the point he was making. He's saying, look, for me, it's better to just report the news once you give it to me if it's big enough, because why would I wait?
Yeah, like I mean, the thing that they were sort of like arguing, and DJ Wait sort of brought up the point where he was like, well, why don't you go for like exclusive interviews when when that person has been signed. Well, I mean, like when you think about it, what's more big? And I mean, like an interview, say with Stefano about what he thinks about joining the team, and then like getting like perspective from like some of the other team members. Yeah, that's big content. But what is going to get you the most Um, page views and hits right off the bat. I mean, if let's just say for whatever reason, FragDojo came out of nowhere, we somehow found out that, let's just say Instinct from Halo is leaving Eon or whatever company is with, and it was signing with Team Liquid. And we were given, like we were saying, and if something came up, like if that actually ended up happening, um, the we would get much more exposure actually going out and leaking it as opposed to like waiting and getting an exclusive interview.
Yeah, and from my perspective, and I'm sure you have the same thing. If we hit that, I would just leak that.
Oh,
Like we would do a write
easy.
up and it would go out instantly because you automatically get hits. Like
Yeah,
that would spread like wildfire. Versus going to Team Liquid or whoever, in that false scenario and say, okay, this is something that we know is going to happen. What are you going to give us to not leak it?
yeah.
Basically, which from what it sounds like to me, going back to the evil genius conversation and what Alex Garfield or whatever his name is, he he said that he had given Slasher those embargoes or whatever before and promised him things. He had said that, oh yeah, well I've done that for you before. I've promised you exclusive interviews. I've promised you, 24 hours after it, you'll get an exclusive interview with whatever, and you'll be the only one who gets the interview, and stuff like that. And is that really worth Slasher saying, well, am I going to get more hits off of that exclusive interview and a nice write up than I am off this one little 3 paragraph leak that's going to get, me to the top page of Reddit? Like,
I
I,
think I mean it's definitely a give and take. I mean, um, what gives you most I mean, I guess another thing that you can look at is the quality of the actual articles of the leaks. I mean, Slasher has gone and done some like terrific like written pieces, and the actual quality like of the journalistic side of it was lackluster. But
yeah.
I mean, it's still I mean, any day of the week, if somebody said, "Hey, we're gonna," you can either, if you can either leak something or do an exclusive interview. I'm gonna 9 times out of 10 leak it unless there's a possible like legal action against me and opposed to me leaking it.
And see, there's no legal action
No.
that's gonna come from it. Like he could leak it, and no one's gonna be able to say anything for him, like to him. They're just gonna say, "Well, what can we do?" Like, you know.
And one of the few times that Slasher did get to speak, where he sort of talked about the Stefano hype train that happened when he originally leaked that EG was planning on signing Stefano, and then the week after that, ESFI did their article on it, huge thing, and then when finally EG still brought out their announcement video, which I believe was the curse video about how every single person has the EG curse, as whatever it's supposed to be called. I haven't seen the video in a while. But then that still it was a huge video. Like every, like even, so I mean, I can understand sort of some of the points that Alex brought up on why, like they have full-time video people and people
Yeah.
constantly like writing stuff up, but like the way he sort of just conducted himself was atrocious.
Oh, it was awful, and that was my biggest problem with it. And I think he caused more harm to his community than Slasher ever could by doing that.
Yeah.
Anybody who watched that lost respect for that guy.
Oh, I
Only
mean, I've always been like a supporter of EG because when I did follow StarCraft 2. I mean, some of those players were some of my favorite people,
Exactly.
but like this entire scenario is just like sort of like, wow.
It
I guess when you have a stranglehold on, not really like I mean, I can't really say a stranglehold. I mean, sort of like when you have like, when you're one of the top esports team, I guess it does go to your head sometimes.
yeah, and the biggest problem is, for me at least, I lost respect because I understand it's a business for him. He's got to uphold a business model, and it's important that that's how he makes money. That's how he makes a living, which is fine. I understand it, but that's how Slasher makes a living too. So he has to understand both sides. But I really lost all of the respect I had for that guy and a lot of the team when I realized that they were just acting like pompous assholes the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, I understand your frustration, but you have to understand the other side. And he just refused to listen to the other side. He was
Yeah, I
like, "It's
mean,
my content. I own it. I have the right to do whatever I want with it." And the problem is, it might be your content, but you don't own shit. Because if it gets leaked, it's no longer your content.
no.
It's your fault for letting it get leaked. So if you cause it and you cause it to get leaked, that's your problem. It's not Slash's problem for releasing it. And
No, I mean,
I don't. If you guys look in the days after this, there's been articles released. There was an article released on PC Gamer. There was a there was a bunch of Reddit threads. There's an article on TL that and ESPN.
the
Um,
ESPN writer
yeah,
where he was
it,
actually comparing esports to legitimate journalism. For I guess he's an MLB writer. I'm not actually 100% sure. I just know his like his handle is like Crash Burn Alley, or that's what his
yeah,
column name is.
yeah. I just found the
And
article. I went back to it. Yeah, it's his Twitter's at Crash Bernali. It's Bill Bayer. He's a sports writer for ESPN, and basically he talks about different pieces that Slasher does that make sense, and that's exactly like a sport. And he's also an esport. He also follows esports, so it makes sense. Let me find a good quote. There's one in here. He says in traditional sports, teams and journalists work together dispassionately. They just kind of work together out of necessity. Teams know it's their best interest to allow access, even if many of the things they report uh, would otherwise be kept secret. So he's basically saying that teams have the same situation in actual sports. They don't want this shit leaked. They don't want anybody else to know, but yet it comes out anyways, and they know that they don't have any way to keep it secret, so they just work with them and give them these leaks to build up hype around their thing. But he says it in his last paragraph. He says EG's issue with Slasher's reporting is their fault. If they want information used that way, uh, if they want if they want information used the way they want it to be used, they need to withhold the information as they see fit, which is certainly their right. Slasher's effort to find the information and ability to find and cultivate sources of that information is to be commended, not criticized or ridiculed, which is completely true. He also talks about in here how Slasher, he, it's his job to go out and find it. It's his job to go out and find his sources and poke around and get that information. And
mhm.
and, and it's completely true. And he brings a good point that it's not Slasher's fault that he's leaking this stuff. It's EG's fault.
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, it's sort of like I'm gonna bring up a quick hockey scenario.
The
Back, I believe
aliens.
it was, of course, I love my hockey. So glad it's back.
Yeah.
But I think it was last year at the trade deadline. Two big, soon to be free agents were in play, and I'm not 100% sure on the two names. I just know that they ended up getting like a 10-year, $98 million deal, and the big favorites were, I think it was like the Detroit Red Wings, and there was a couple other big name teams. And for whatever reason, somehow nobody really knew until at the very, very last second when they snuck in and stole both players. The Minnesota Wild ended up giving both players the money they wanted and the years that they wanted. and nobody, like, I mean, I was when I heard about it, I was blown away because I was like, I was not expecting Minnesota to come out of nowhere and steal both of those players.
And see, they
Um,
kept the news to themselves. They kept an organization and the players.
yeah.
And I follow soccer, football in Europe or whatever. Um, I follow the transfer deadline because it's the transfer window right now, and there is just
Mhm.
leak after leak after leak, and most of it doesn't come true. It's
Yeah.
anonymous sources or whatever. And the ones who do come true, you're like, holy crap, how did that happen? Well,
Yeah.
players get stolen all the time, and it just happens. But one more quote from this article. He says a journalist cannot be subject to the whims of a company's bottom line. As someone who actively labels himself as a journalist, Slashers has put zero interest in the maximization of EG's page views or advertising revenue. He should not care about hype or, to be used in their term, anti-hype. He should not care about the progression or regression of esports even, which is completely true. He shouldn't care about any of that. He needs to care
No.
about himself.
Yeah.
He needs
No.
to be a
And
journalist.
yeah,
He
I
needs to care
mean,
about the
journalists.
news.
Yeah, journalists are impartial to whatever they are talking about. But I mean, I'll still go and like respect. I mean, I respect Slasher for what he does. I think he gets a lot of shit thrown at him that's unneeded by both teams, the community. I mean, like you can sort of see, look at his TV, look at his show when he was working with MLG. Fuck Slasher. I mean, like there's never really been any like sort of respect towards him. But I mean, if there's anybody who ever's brought like the hard hitting articles, the hard hitting news, the most like breakthroughs, it's Slasher.
Yeah, he is the esports journalist. He brings
Yeah,
everything that is good for the community out.
and I
Um,
mean he's
we're
been
both,
doing this for 6 years and he's
yeah,
still relevant.
yeah. And then in the last part of the interview that they had on the show, they brought in Total Biscuit, and they talked about some various things that he did within the situation with Slasher and what he thought. Um,
He sort of gave his own opinion on everything that was happening with, I mean, Slasher, and EG more
yeah,
specifically, and then sort of like his opinions on the entire thing. He sort of like paraphrasing a bit. He sort of breaks it down as well that I mean the articles that Slasher wrote about when he announced the leaks. It was terrible journalism in the part of the actual stuff that he wrote, but it was otherwise like he doesn't believe that Slasher did anything wrong per se.
yeah. And this all kind of they brought him on to talk about it because he is the what was he the official
Uh,
sponsor and owner, I guess, of
I
Axiom Esports, right?
think he's the team owner of Axiom Esports. Esports, sorry, and the official sponsor is Acer Esports. Don't quote me on that. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure.
Well, they brought him on because Alex Garfield talked about how Slasher.
Other
He talked about other basically teams being pissed off at Slasher for what he did. And Slasher brought up that he really doubted that the guy from Team Liquid was
Victor, aka Nazgul.
yeah was mad at him for what he did for the league. Um, and Alex Garfield basically said, "No, he's pissed at you." Like
And so is every other
and
like
so is every other esports team. And basically, when they brought in Total Biscuit, he said he was smart and he said, "No, I'm not mad at Slasher at all. He did exactly what I wanted him to do." What Total
yeah,
Biscuit did is he leaked a little bit of information, enough to get
specific specifically to Slasher to get
yeah,
him to sort of like get that hype train as if you want to call it that
yeah.
rolling on a couple players that he was planning on picking up and then sort
And
of
really, he also leaked stuff. He just did indirect little links and hints to Slasher, and Slasher kind of thought he figured out what it was all about. And from there, he just started posting leaks and different things like that, like Slasher does, and built up the hype around the new team.
yeah,
Um, and Total Biscuit said he purposely left things out about like Scarlet, who was their biggest signing on
at
their
the
new
time.
team, and he purposely left that out so there would be something for them to hype up later, and that was their big piece of news. So they brought all the hype, and Slasher built up the hype for the team and brought in page views and got people interested, and then they dropped their biggest bombshell for the team, and that just he said he has over 100,000 hits
just on that video alone.
just on that video alone in like a day, like 24 hours, which is pretty good for his channel. Um, and that's like we were talking about earlier. That's how teams need to use information. That's what they do in sports. They leak information that they want leaked. And
Yeah,
some of the stuff they don't want leaked, they just don't leak it. They
yeah,
leak the stuff. They leak the stuff to ESPN or Sky Sports or whoever it is, wherever it is around the world. They leak stuff that they want leaked, and that's what goes out. If they don't want something leaked, hell, they just don't tell them.
hmm
And it just doesn't get out. If it
yeah.
gets out, you know that they wanted it out. That's the problem. The biggest problem with esports is, as we said before, we've said this over and over again. The biggest problem is they just don't know how to market themselves correctly.
It's
E.g.,
also it's also not marketing. It's not so much. I mean, it is marketing to an extent. The other thing that companies need or teams specifically need to realize is that like the fact that they think that even though like it's pretty much been like the entire like the sort of I guess you could say uprising of esports in the last 2.5 years. These teams need to realize that they can't be babysat anymore. That like we're not like the community itself isn't going to like raise their pitchforks at Slasher for leaking this stuff just because a team is mad at it. They really should like be like, okay, that we're starting to become a legitimate organization. We need to start acting like one, and
yeah.
that's what's gonna actually is probably going to separate the teams. Separate the teams, like the teams now and the teams possibly in like a couple years. But I mean, like, but then you also bring up the thing, the entire fact that like you want to keep a lid on it, but then you don't want to go like crazy. Like I'm going to sort of throw it out there, Korean style, where like you have like Kespa and then the
Well,
other organization
but
sort
that
of having like
but
a
that's a good example though. It is possible to keep all that stuff in, like
oh
from an esports, because they're a perfect example. You don't want to. You say you don't want to go that far, but if you don't want to leak anything, they don't leak anything. You
no
don't know anything about their salaries. You don't know how much they make. You don't know if people are going to be traded. You don't know anything like that. You just don't know until it happens and
yeah
it's released officially. And while that might be a bad thing for the community as a whole, that kind of proves Slasher's point. Because if everything is kept in, and it's only official leaks, is it
everything
better? I mean, is it better in the long run? I mean, you look at the jokes they were making about Kespa. It's saying, oh, well, it's so tight, so stringent, you never know anything. Well, hell, that's because they purposely don't leak anything.
Yeah, that's the way they want their league to be run.
Yeah.
Is that people? I mean, the only thing that is ever is going to official is that when it comes out of like an actual Caspa uh official, I guess you could say, when they actually go and drop a press release and do the entire thing, and it's just sort of like one of those things is that esports really or like North American teams more specifically need to start realizing that hey, this is if we want a shot at legitimizing everything, we need to start figuring out things properly. We need to run not so much the teams, but like tournaments. No, they need to run really, really good tournaments to keep interest involved. And there's just so many things that there. It's
It
gonna be
turns into professionalism.
yeah,
It turns into professional, but that's a whole nother conversation in
yeah.
itself. Within this, I really do think that the teams just need to learn how to market themselves more correctly, and it is marketing when you leak certain information and keep others. That is a marketing ploy, and the teams really just need to learn how to market themselves a little better, um, so they can put themselves in a better position, both with the media and with their own community, and that way they can maximize their profits and the hype around their community themselves. Well, I hope that kind of shows you guys our opinions and you understand where we came from. I'll put the link for the VOD of the Live on 3 so you can watch it in the description. You can go out, PC Gamer, it's right on their front page if you want to read that article, and you can find it on Team Liquid. It's really easy to find. This will be up on the website. If you watch this and you haven't signed up at FragDojo.com, please do. We're gonna have a lot more content coming out very, very soon. We've got a lot of stuff planned, a lot of cool pieces we're gonna put into place. You won't regret it.
Plus written articles by me.
Yeah, finally, I'm gonna start writing stuff. So yeah, please come sign up, guys, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.